Hi, everyone. Your host, Amanda here. Before we dive into today's episode, I'm excited to let you know that my recent TEDx talk on the future of work is now live. I tackle all the ways that work is broken and how, if we let them, Gen Z can help us fix it. Check out the show notes of this episode for a link to watch the full talk.
Welcome to Design Nerds Anonymous, the podcast that's I got so high. The podcast that sparks curiosity at the intersection of business and design. I'm Austin Schneider, son of your host, Amanda Schneider. And to me, it's pretty cool to share my mom with all of you. You heard my mom talking about me last episode. Here I am. I'm on the edge of Gen Z and Gen Alpha. Even I know that websites matter, and that's what last week's episode is about. So if you missed that conversation, let me invite you to go check out episode 1. But today we're talking about the future of work, because by the time I'm going to be in the workforce, AI could be my coworker, my boss, or even my competition. My mom says things are changing fast. But is the world ready? Let's find out.
I'm your host, Amanda Schneider. This season, we're looking beyond our industry, exploring bold, Phygital strategies from unexpected places to help us rethink how we engage and connect. Think emotions don't have a place at work? Well, this episode will make you think again. For years, we've talked about the future of work through the lens of physical spaces. More recently, the conversation has shifted in a major way to digital tools. How new ways of working are reshaping collaboration. But what's often missing is the most important question. Why do people choose to show up at all? What truly motivates them to engage, connect, and contribute when they have more choice than ever about where and how they work? And it turns out, people are more invested in this question today than ever. I've been writing about the future of work for a long time. Back when I was a Huffington Post blogger, my tagline was, I write about the future of work for those who design and furnish the spaces where we work. But never have I ever seen an industry perspective take off in the broader world like it is now. Our recent Forbes article, over 220,000 views. Our MIT Sloan piece, co-authored with Brian Elliott, it was the top performing article for the publication in July of 2024. And even my recent TEDx talk was selected by TED to launch to their audience of 43 million. Something has changed recently. The world isn't just talking about workplace transformation. They're living it. And they're hungry for insights from those who shape it. And for those of us in the business of designing and furnishing spaces, this is our moment. The world is ready to hear from us. So in this episode, we're challenging the way we think about workplace experience, not just as a functional problem to solve, but as an emotional one that taps into deeper human motivations, redefines how we connect, and shapes the next era of work in ways we may not have considered before. Today, we're going to talk about the future of work. Now, we've all heard the buzzwords, the predictions, the endless debates. But let's be honest. Most of these conversations feel stuck. Same topics, same questions, same answers. This episode is different. This isn't just about hybrid models, office footprints, or the latest workplace tech. It's about something deeper. The stories we tell about work, the experiences we create, and the message we, as an industry, want to send to the world. So to explore that, we've finally found the perfect moment to bring my friend Phil Kirshner onto the podcast, a conversation I've been waiting years to have. Now, if you haven't heard of him, Phil Kirshner has spent over 2 decades shaping corporate real estate, employee experience, and workplace strategy. If you follow him on social, you know he's data-driven, very outspoken, and truly unafraid to challenge the status quo. Accompanying him in this discussion today is Matthew Marzynski. Matthew is someone AI thought that I should meet, and AI was right. As part of Microsoft's digital workplace experiences team, he's pioneering hybrid and AI-powered meeting technology, redefining how we meet, collaborate, and, most importantly, why we show up at all. Together, Phil and Matthew push this conversation into new territory, challenging assumptions, sparking fresh ideas, and making us all rethink what the future of work really could mean. Hang tight. We'll be back in a sec.
NeoCon 2025 is June 9th through the 11th at the Mart in Chicago, and we have a great show in store. I'm Byron Morton, Vice President and Co-Head of Leasing at the Mart. Our programming, presented in partnership with AIA Chicago, ASID, BIFMA, IIDA, Fast Company, and Crane Chicago Business, will highlight keynotes, special features, and workshops covering inclusive design, neurodiversity, and return to the office, in addition to over 50 CEUs offered live or online. Special features and activations will include NeoCon Talks in the 7th floor exhibit hall, Paved States, a curated pop-up celebrating emerging design talent, a new experiential program in conjunction with the Design Museum of Chicago called Inside Design, IIDA's Revel in Design celebration and their annual meeting, a new Art on the Mart NeoCon collaboration in partnership with Perkins & Will, the NeoCon Podcast Studio, presented by Sandow's Surround Network, Interior Design's Design Scene Space, and the Metropolis Sustainability Lab on 11th, the NeoCon Park and Cafe Space on the South Drive, and back for its third year, the first NeoCon program. I can't wait to welcome you and over 50,000 industry professionals to see thousands of new products from hundreds of industry-leading manufacturers, June 9th through the 11th, only at the Mart in Chicago.
All right, let's meet Phil and Matthew.
I'm Matthew Marzynski. I'm a product manager at Microsoft Digital, which is part of the company that develops and implements and evolves our internal infrastructure. In another age, you might have thought of us as the IT department, but it's a lot more than that. And my area of focus is the AI-powered Phygital workplace. One word that describes the future of the workplace as I see it, fluid.
That's a great one. Nice to be here. Thank you, Amanda, for finally getting me on the pod, so to speak. I am Phil Kirshner. I currently run my own business, PK Consulting, which is a kind of modern work design and future of work consultancy. But I have a kind of windy path through the future of work and workplace, starting as a practitioner at Credit Suisse, where I helped build their workplace mobility program 15 years ago now. Then was a workplace consultant at JLL, built and led the workplace consultancy at WeWork, which was fascinating in terms of the intersection of the digital and emotional and physical design. And then spent the last 3 years until this summer leading most of the client service and research on the future workplace at McKinsey, sitting between their real estate and people practices. I did actually start in IT, so maybe that'll be a good connection between me and Matthew. And if I had to think of one word that isn't fluid, which would have been my first one to describe the future of work, maybe it's responsive.
Ooh, fluid and responsive. I like those words together. And I love digital, emotional, and physical, because probably that emotional piece is maybe a little underrepresented in a lot of these dialogues. So, Phil, tell me what you mean by emotional.
A story I find myself telling all the time about WeWork is the staggering number of executives who would come to see not just like normal member buildings, but our headquarters at the time. And within 10 feet of the elevator, their coat still in their hand, barely entered the building, would all say something to the effect of, why does it feel this way? He always seemed a little put off by the fact that he even reached for a word like feeling to describe something in an office context. And that always started a very different conversation about what are you trying to make it feel like to work for your company, whether they're in the office or not.
Fascinating. I want to jump to a pre-comment that Matthew made that was my favorite part of this pre-call. I actually shut down the call after that because I was like, this is getting too good. Save it for the podcast. But you said, Matthew, when people say we come into the office to meet, it's like saying I get in the car to drive. No one gets in the car to drive. They want to get somewhere. No one wants a meeting. What they want is the outcome of that. So that is maybe a fun thing to say right now in the circles that I run in, certainly, is that we're going to come into the office to meet. But tell us a little bit more about that statement and what makes you say that.
Workplace meetings are, just to continue on that car theme, they're a vehicle for developing ideas, for solving problems, and for building cultural understanding and connective tissue. And the red thread that runs through all those things is influence. I would say we come into the office, we meet in order to help build our influence, whether that means convincing somebody of your idea or just helping them get to know you. That's really what you're there for. Nobody meets because they just love to have a meeting. And so it's really important to think about what you're trying to accomplish in that meeting scenario. And then think back from that. What are you doing to help make that happen or not make that happen? I'll give you one example, and that's what I call the police interrogation room problem. If you've ever been in a meeting before where you are the remote participant and you're looking at the room in the office through a camera that's mounted really high up, and you've got sort of a high angle view down on a table. It looks like you're watching a police procedure where a suspect is being interrogated. And there's really a distancing that happens there just through that decision to put the camera way up high. And they may have just been thinking, well, it's just a meeting. We're just going to get work done. It doesn't really matter. You just need a view of the room. But in today's work scenarios, that person may not have the option to come in, but we want to create an environment where they really have equal influence, where they have equity in that experience. And so little decisions like that, how you tune the audio, how you tune the video, where you place the camera, and how you show people's faces on camera. And those are all drivers of influence and how you connect to the rest of the people in the room. There's critical ideas to think about when you're trying to imagine how meetings can actually work successfully.
Let's take a quick breath. When we return, the conversation picks up right where we left off.
Deep Green is a podcast about how buildings can be designed to make our world a better place. In each episode, we tackle climate change, health crises, economic inequality, and much more, all through the lens of architecture and interior design. I'm Avi Rajagopal, the host of Deep Green and the editor-in-chief of Metropolis, a magazine about how architecture and design shape our future. You can listen to episodes of Deep Green on surroundpodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Let's get back into it. What's interesting about that is it kind of goes back to what you were saying, Phil, about the feelings. This is not Phygital, just physical and digital, but we need to figure out a way to shoehorn emotional in there.
Actually, what you made me think back to WeWork in the power of gathering in that culture. Because actually, WeWork at Pace was moving so fast and we were outgrowing our own spaces constantly. And so the actual meeting experience for your general employee was chaotic and scrappy and disconnected, like really chaotic, which is the opposite of the kind of environment you were talking about creating. But on the flip side, people there were deeply emotionally and personally connected to each other, in part because of the periodic but meaningful, significant gathering events that the firm did. And I used to joke, if you spend a weekend in a field with someone, like in a tent, you haven't showered in 48 hours and you're all having a beer or like listening to a concert or something, you get a solid 6 months or more of what I think it's Toby Lucky from Shopify who uses the phrase trust batteries. You fill that battery up real big when you have that kind of experience with someone. So that months later on a crappy camera on the top of the room, I am more sensitive to the feelings of that person. And that person is more likely to be able to go, hey, you're not listening to me. And there's something in the social capital that comes from that experience. Now, 95% of companies don't get to do those things. So you actually have to build a meeting room and build a purpose for the meeting and a culture that allows for that equity and experience to be there all the time. But there's a lesson, I think, in that the human element and the social capital can overcome the technical weakness or the spatial weakness when it's there. But that's much harder than just saying, oh, we should probably look for better cameras.
And I think people are struggling with that emotional social capital today, which maybe is the feelings piece that we're not talking about. It's harder to build when you're not maybe physically face to face like we're used to being. So let's talk about that digital equity. How do we start to build that, or how do we need to think differently from traditional norms as we continue into this new era?
There's an interesting use curve data that's developed at my workplace. We just built a brand new campus here in Redmond that is state of the art in terms of sensors and insights. One of the interesting things that we've noticed in our new campus is the kind of bell curve over the day that develops around people coming into the office, people scheduling meeting, and lunchtime. We have these fantastic cafes in this building. It's like a food hall scenario, where you get like 20 different kinds of cuisine, and the place is just packed. Meetings peak during that part of the day, and work gets done. One of the things that I wonder about is just, it's like the power of a meal. There's so many places where you can grab something to go, sit down, talk to somebody over a drink or over a sandwich or whatever it is that we're serving that day. And what's kind of cool about that is that this notion of when people come into the office has really started revolving around some of these human cow paths. It's not that I'm going to be in the office on Monday, Tuesday, work from home Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday's up in the air. It might be that I'm in the office, out of the office, back in the office on any one given day. It really depends on the ebb and flow, and meals are one of those basic human needs that's met. And so back to your question, Amanda, about building that emotional connection, recognizing that people just biologically need to run their lives in the workplace is one of those things that really fuels our ability to get work done.
I am a firm believer that one of the challenges a lot of companies are facing now in invoking my least favorite word to describe the future of work, which is hybrid, is that hybrid carries absolutely no intention about how the work gets done.
But a lot of emotional response.
Huge emotional response, no intention. And the purpose of being digital first is to recognize that you want most of the work to be taking place in a way that transcends place and time, as digital forward, as asynchronous forward as you can, which does not mean that if you see someone in the hallway and you feel an urge to brainstorm quickly, that you have to go time out and we both have to go run to our own computers and I have to write my note to you and then you respond later. No. It can be as simple as just recognizing that if you do find yourself in the office scrapping something out on a board with somebody, that part of your thought process is like, great, take a snapshot, or can I bring that into the digital world so that it lives, so that other people can pile on later who weren't there in the moment, and that you've got a record, or setting the bar really high for having a meeting in the first place so that the meeting, back to Matthew's earlier point, represents a very small part of an overall activity. You do that because then you have equity, right? And even with every intent to have everybody together at the same time, it's not possible. Our teams are all over the world. We have to operate that way. Then you can take advantage of when we are together to do the really human stuff instead of meeting, but more mentoring and apprenticeship and feedback and the softer side of social capital. We have to do both things, right? We have to make better places. And it sounds like this new campus is pretty fabulous, and keep working on the work, because so many people, unfortunately, who are impressing to come in and to do those things were the ones who felt the most included that way, which was not necessarily the case for everybody.
Amanda, I want to talk a little bit about digital equity. One of the questions that you had is, what emerging technologies do you think will play a critical role in shaping the workplace of the future? I think that AI is going to be a massive change driver in defining the future of the workplace, but maybe not in the way that many people think of it right now. There's this meme going around right now that I love that says, instead of AI helping me with writing and art so I can get more laundry done, why can't it do the laundry so I can get better at art and writing? And we're still in the part of the AI kind of hype cycle that many people are focused on the more surface level and easier to understand capabilities of AI. Like text to image generation and information retrieval. And that's both useful and fun. But imagine for a minute the story of a frontline worker. So we'll call her Amanda. Amanda's 29. She works at a large DIY store helping customers with projects. And her employer is this big company that provides good benefits like health insurance and daycare, which helps a lot because she's also a single mom. But as an hourly employee, Amanda has to constantly balance the ebb and flow of her workplace and her home life, which in the past, this means a tangle of apps and passwords and policies. But now Amanda's daily interaction with her employer is largely automated through her smartphone app. And one day she asks the app chatbot, how many hours do I need to work this month to maintain my benefits? It's a complex multi-layered question really underneath those few words. And the chatbot says, if you work at least 2 shifts, you'll be good. And here are a couple of options that line up with daycare availability. Do you want to schedule these right now? What's really powerful about that is that the way that this technology gives Amanda the sense of agency over her relationship with her employer. It's given her equity in that relationship rather than being crushed down by the weight of the systems. The systems are actually starting to collapse into the experience that Amanda wants to focus on. And this is what I meant when I used the word fluid to describe the workplace of the future. When she asked her question, she already had an outcome in mind, which is to lock down the hours she needs to take care of her family. That's the intent. And AI just smoothly collapses and flows that to an end without the usual obstacle. And that's a really very near future scenario. What's interesting and really hard about my job right now is being part of the foundational work that's required to actually realize it. You can't just link a payroll system to a scheduling system to a vendor benefit provider's API and access it all through a network with whatever security policy you've had in place for years. That's a lot of work under the hood that has to take place. And that's companies like Microsoft are building that right now. But the outcome is this fluid way to realize that intent that Amanda has. And that's really powerful. I think that is a huge game changer in the way that we interact.
I love that a tech giant is thinking about these things. I recently gave a TEDx talk, and one of the things that I talked about was really looking at when and where you work best. And it was so interesting because I was sharing with my best friend a draft of the talk before I gave it. And to her, it was very shocking. In her mind, you just work 8 to 5. That is an accepted norm. She was like, I've honestly never thought about that. She said, Amanda, I know the industry you're in. You probably think about this all the time, but most of us don't even realize that we have the capacity to think that way. And you contrast that conversation and what you're saying, Matthew, with our industry, which tends to be architects, designers, commercial real estate, heads of real estate that are trying to make decisions about this incredible investment of physical space. And they're asking for things like return on commute. Like, I want to know this investment that I'm making makes sense versus your story about your fictional Amanda is a real personal, back to Phil's emotional story there. So Phil, I'd love to hear what that sparks for you, knowing that you're probably pulled into these return on commute conversations much more often than Matthew's how do we help single mom Amanda?
What I believe is the problem. Most offices, generally speaking, were designed to solve everybody's problem all the time. It's like a generic solution instead of being a specific one. And most people, most of the work that they do most of the time isn't great in the office, which is why they quickly resort to home, go, oh, this is much better. I can control my environment, so I don't want to leave. It's very hard to say, oh, come on in to collaborate. And you're like, I'm collaborating perfectly fine here. Thank you very much. And it's cold out. So what we need to do is define and be much more open to distinctive purposes of individual places. Tell me that my office is a kind of social capital and mentoring connection hub. Cool. Show me that you designed it specifically for that purpose, which means it doesn't need to be a sea of desks, or if there are desks to help me get my work done, we're solving for 3 things. A+. Everything else is a B-. You're welcome to hang out here all you want, but this is why this place exists. And the extension of that is there are other places in this world, which my company may or may not control, that are really good for other things. And sometimes the answer is, let's say, Matthew, Amanda, you, me, we want to get together and do something. That the answer isn't we should go to the office. Maybe we all happen to actually live uptown, but the office is downtown. And it's not rocket science to ask the question, gee, I wonder if there is a place that is nearer to our center of gravity that has some very particular resource available to us and is available in 20 minutes, and I can pick up a coffee on my way there. It's the kind of shifts and benefits in daycare example that Matthew is, again, not rocket science. An intern with a couple of spreadsheets could figure it out. But it's got to happen in that moment. And the cognitive load is so high without assistance that AI can provide to us that it's just easier to be like, nah, we'll make a Zoom call. And so we need that support to make it possible to just like align all the dots in the constellation or to give us an opportunistic nudge in our day. I go to bed, I wake up, and unbeknownst to me while I was asleep, my boss is now on a plane from wherever they live. It isn't where I live. And they're coming to the city where I live to do something that doesn't involve me. But I want my phone to say, hey, the boss is here today. I can't guarantee you time in their calendar, but I can tell you where they're going to be. And I could move some things around your calendar for you. I could help get you into where they're going to be. And that shouldn't be hard. And then the last part, or the last barrier there, then becomes the individual. Are we culturally ready yet to take the kind of nudge that we get from Netflix at work? You watch this, you probably like that. There will definitely continue to be much more immersive and high fidelity video and collaborative tools that may make it worth not the big C commute, but the little C commute. If you told me, look, we're going to have a 3-hour session, that is abusive to do at home on our tiny little webcams. Maybe the answer is you drive for 10 minutes to the office because you're close, and I'll drive 10 minutes to some co-working place that's nearby, but the co-working place has like the cool video room, and I'll book that for you. And that thing's got a thing that can talk to your office in a way that doesn't make you want to kill yourself after an hour on the call. But it all comes back to better technical resources in better places still needs just the brain with all those sorts of to get you in the right place at the right time without taking hours to even just figure out if it's possible.
Phil's raising an interesting point. It speaks to the blurring of the line between the facilities organization and the IT organization. And this is one of the reasons that when I was introducing myself, I sort of joked that years ago, I would have been working in the IT department. But we have very few boundaries between our facilities team and our technology team. One of the places that collision or that intersection happens is in time and place calendaring. So if you think of Outlook, it's a place to schedule meetings right now. And when I give a meeting acceptance right now, one of the choices that I have is yes in person, yes digitally. So the system is starting to try to understand where I'm going to be physically. And the system can put me in the right spot in the building, depending on what that group looks like. It really is a Phygital type of a problem to solve, because you're not just saying these meetings are going to happen somewhere in the ether. These meetings are actually going to happen in a building that's made out of atoms, not bits. And we have to have space, and that space has to be managed. We have to manage the flow of people, and we have to pick the right room for the job and right room for the scenario. And time and place calendaring does that kind of thing. So is that a facilities problem? Is that an IT problem? The answer is yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree with that. And it feels like a constant goal to reduce friction to make these things happen. But I think the future of this could be a combination of reducing and introducing friction to help encourage behaviors. I was having this conversation with a firm principal a couple of days ago who was concerned about some of their younger interior designers and product selection just drifting to whatever's the easiest. And I think that we do risk that with our workplaces is not the best, but maybe whatever is the easiest, which is a little bit scary too.
On the advanced tech part, let's not forget autonomous vehicles will become autonomous workplaces / meeting rooms. Like getting around campus is one thing, but that kind of opportunistic, oh, Amanda's here. You didn't think Amanda's here. You could go get a coffee with Amanda, but like you're at home now and you have that call between now and potential perfect coffee time with Amanda. Would you like me to basically make a meeting room in a box show up outside of your door dial you into that call you have in between and get you to coffee with Amanda, combining the mobility and the productivity, that's a ways off, but is a very logical path for where all this is going, which hopefully even further blurs that line of where I need to be, because you're like, I can keep you productive in a way when you're moving. It still comes back to the digital first, right? You cannot take an opportunistic nudge, which might just be your own company telling you, you start your day in building A and then you should go to building B for the afternoon. You can't do it if you have a schedule that is back to meetings. And if you are not willing to be nudged physically, which we don't like right now, most of us. Most people don't even like unassigned seats, much less moving between unassigned seats, right?
No, we're still getting used to our watches telling us to get up and move every 20 minutes, right? Matthew, I want to come back to you because another area of your expertise is around workplace and collaboration spaces. You said when you started this that a lot of your assumptions were wrong around these spaces. I don't know if that's because of these changing times. I'd love to hear what assumptions were wrong and maybe what new assumptions you and your team are looking at moving forward.
One of the assumptions that we made really early in the return to work journey was that we had to provide a ton of flexibility in meeting spaces. And actually that assumption was grounded in a request from our employees and also just insights we were pulling around the industry, build in maximum flexibility. We actually partnered with a major contract furniture manufacturer and built a pilot space at one of our buildings that had this really cool furniture that was very modular and adaptable. I think we had about 600 square feet that was divided up into zones, so you could use it all together as one space, or you could kind of parcel it up. And we brought in our mobile meeting technology, so interactive boards on wheeled easels, and you could set up the room in any way that you wanted. And it was really, really cool. And it was like super high fit and finish level. And we ran a pilot for about 6 months. Our real estate and facilities practice doing this along with my team, which was the technology side of it. And we ran this pilot and we had actual work meetings going on. People would come into the office just to meet in this pilot space. And there was often a facilitator to just kind of help acclimatize people. And the meetings went really well once the room was set up. And then the next group would come in. And what was interesting was we discovered that what that next group did is they pretty much just used the setup that the previous group had created. And sometimes that worked and sometimes that didn't. And the important insight that came out of that, well, two things. As a former industrial designer, I probably should have known better. But it just reminded me the importance, which is the request that comes out of the person's mouth is not necessarily what they need. There's a difference between what people ask for and what they actually need. The second insight is the last thing that somebody who's about to go into a meeting wants to do is to be an interior designer. They just want to start the meeting. They want it to work. And so our assumption around flexibility turned into a more intelligent assumption about familiarity and discoverability. That pilot was really powerful and beneficial in that it took us more in a direction where we did build in some level of discoverability. And what I mean by that is not that requires you to configure it, but that the room has an unexpected delighter in it. Maybe it's a table that you can flip around and turn into a bankhead, or maybe it's something on wheels that is normally not on wheels so that you can double up and kind of ad hoc a space together, or a new type of seating, or a new type of wall surface or sound. But those are all peripheral to waypoints that are familiar in the room. And that's really, really important. You know, on the surface, the idea of an empty room with furniture all around the walls that you just sort of wheel together, it was a little bit of a failure. But if you flip that around, what it's actually saying is that things that feel familiar in the room are really, really important to getting people to feel comfortable around new technology. So that's how our assumptions, our kind of broad assumptions about how people are going to work, turned into these direct and attainable insights around how you get people to adapt to new experiences.
So interesting, because I think that goes back to, again, the feelings and the emotions, not really the physical space or the digital space?
Look, really short. I've lived that journey, not a designer, but like the only way to fix some of these office problems is the office becomes more like a hospitality situation. And if it becomes more hospitality oriented, that change management, give them permission thing, in a sense, shouldn't exist. What's so beautiful about hospitality, or even if you think of meetings and event centers, right? You already say, we have a meeting for this reason, or just say, this is what I want it to feel like. And you show up and ta-da, it's been done for you by some magical furniture gnomes that you never saw, right? That's the direction of travel. If you're in a building that has been designed properly, and not just for your own private tenancy, if you say, this is what I need, and you're willing to take the nudge, and you have some space in your day, and that there's more of a product and hospitality orientation, their response should be like, this is the right room for you. And maybe there's some that are hackable and movable, and the like meeting facilitation and workplace experience services will just take care of that for you. Or it's that you're building even better design spaces that aren't necessarily designed to be the thing that changes. It's your journey that changes, which was never possible before. Easy to say, hard to do, but like the workplace holistically is a product. If you think of that, SaaS products don't have to play that. Oh yeah, the user needs permission to ask. They come to you with, this is the thing that you need. And how can I help you? And how do I catch you when you stumble and find the missed shopping cart? We have to learn a little bit more from that and how we think about it, because the A to B change management is gone. It's change muscle, change mindset, whatever you want to call it, that it's going to be never ending. So our leaders have to think that way. And that comes back to fluid and responsive.
I love the idea of taking cues from hospitality there, which might be...
Which is happening. It is happening.
Yeah.
It's why people liked WeWork so much.
Because they had a human there.
Co-working is almost by definition all in product. Why does it feel this way? I designed that. I put that human over there. I give you this app. I'm playing that music. It's all one thing.
That's a powerful insight. So before I worked at Microsoft, I worked at a design firm that was the firm that designs all of Boeing's aircraft interiors. Aircraft, and if you think about like how airlines differentiate each other, it's the in-cabin experience. Airframes are designed to last about 30 years, but they get refreshed over and over again. And it's a really difficult problem because it's 20-foot diameter, 100-something foot long tube that you have to pack everything into. So it's very much like commercial real estate. The envelopes don't get changed that often because it's really, really difficult to build. But the brand, right, is really more and more experience-based. It's not about flying 100 people from point A to point B. It's, when do you actually start your vacation? Is it the moment you land, or is it the moment that you board? What starts to get you into that mindset, and what are you going to take back with you when you're done? It's use of CMF, use of sound, video, experience, emotion, feeling, to change that experience in a building that's probably still rooted in 100-year-old construction techniques, right? Even if it's not 100 years old, it's really hard to take girders apart and change them and buff them out. But you can do so much by keying into people's emotions and feelings. And hospitality does that really well. It's a great place to turn.
It's amazing what happens when you're paying for the experience. I always say, we don't like to share desks. We don't like to share anything in the world that we don't pay for. We share hotel rooms, we share airplane seats, we share restaurants. We do that all the time. We pay for it. So you're not really a customer, which comes back to the product orientation. If you were a customer and I could fire the office, you're going to behave very differently.
Which is what was so interesting about co-working to me, is looking at reports about what areas of co-working sold out first and for the highest rates. And newsflash, back at the time I was looking at all these reports, was private offices. They want to be able to join when they wanted to join, but go to their den when they want to go to a den, which is probably back to human behavior. Phil, I want to come to you with this one, which I'm going to reword the question here because I know there's a word in it that you hate, but I want to talk about data a little bit. When we think about metrics or key indicators organizations should track to measure relative success, I'm not going to say hybrid, but in a fluid and responsive workplace, are there any maybe surprising metrics that leaders typically overlook today?
Yeah, two things. One, I think leaders overlook, pre-COVID, you were measuring a lot of stuff, largely in human capital effectiveness and experience, right? Really simple. It's not great if the women in your organization are paid or promoted at different rates than the men in your organization. That is not a new problem. That is something everybody, knock on everything, is looking at. and is easy in the sense that your HR people analytics folks are like, we have all the data on the promotions, we have data on all the pay, we have gender. So we can tell you if there is an imbalance because there shouldn't be, right? That would be the problem. In the moment where everyone's like, oh no, hybrid, how do I know it's successful? It's just another variable in the existing machine for your human capital people analytics machine, right? If you don't have a variable that at the very basics articulates like, oh, Amanda is a remote person. We think she's remote, and Matthew's fully in office, and Phil is something in between H word that we won't say. Netflix doesn't have personas. Netflix doesn't put you in one of 12 boxes. Everyone's persona with Netflix is like an N of 1. Here's your fingerprint, right? And they'll be able to tell you, you might like this movie because other people kind of like you like this movie. Same thing. Can we say, look, not just people who are remote or not, but people who are remote, but operate in a certain rhythm, but are using certain tools and using them in certain ways, work one way. And the people who are also remote and also have those tools, but don't use those tools in the same way, don't have the same outcomes. They don't perform as well, they are not promoted, or we don't pay them, or they're not well liked, or they're not as productive. Whatever the measure is, it's just another variable at its simplest, like what's your profile, but ideally more of a persona fingerprint for you. That's step one. If you cannot take the metrics and the dashboards that you had in February of 2020 and just add a new page, you've got a problem. Then I think the companies that are most interesting and leading in a virtual first, but not placeless environment are the ones who are thinking much more about cost or amount of real estate per intended use, not square foot per person or cost per square foot. Those are not humanized metrics. And maybe finally, if you define the purpose of the office and you say, hey, our Chicago office is really a hiring hub. It is designed to get as many people who walk in that door to go, yes, I would like to work here. Can you imagine figuratively sitting down across the table from your building and holding your building accountable for something? Not just did your people show up 3 days a week, but no one does that. Saying like, that thing was supposed to do these 3 business outcomes and it's not doing great on 2 of them. Why is that? And the answer probably isn't the color of the chairs. It's probably how leaders are or aren't showing up, behaving, what tools they're using, how they're communicating. So yeah, can you bring place and movement into your pre-COVID human capital metrics? Can you think about true humanity in the measures that you were thinking of relative to space? And then can you hold your buildings accountable for what they're supposed to do like a retail store does?
Mm-hmm. I love not just holding people accountable, but holding those spaces accountable for those business outcomes. That's fascinating. Matthew, does that spark anything for you?
Oh my God, so much. As the person who works in a team designed to actually making that a reality, the first thing my brain goes to is, oh my God, the privacy. We have to build systems that actually protect from some of that technology. But once I get over that, and we all will get over that, we'll figure it out. I just think about how powerful AI technology is in sifting through the data behind that vision that Phil laid out to be able to gather those insights. I love that germ of an idea that you planted, Phil, about being able to correlate the individuals that have or don't have access to the workplace or to certain resources and their ability to thrive and succeed in the company. We've all had that feeling of just being exhausted at the end of the day for some number of unknown reasons because work is just throwing too much stuff at us. Not everybody does a great job prioritizing. Not everybody does a great job of managing their incoming information and having to be here, having to be there. And those people end up suffering in a modern information age and in a modern workplace. I don't think our workplace people practices are as well as equipped as they could be right now to help people manage that. It's just a torrent of stuff coming at us right now. And I understand why people think about this a simpler time, but you just go into the office, you do your thing in the office, you shut the door, you get in your car and you go home. Yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah. And I think the interesting thing about that, Matthew, is it goes back to that feeling at the end of the day, that exhaustion is probably not wholly tied to a physical place or wholly tied to a digital tool. it really is rooted in that emotion that Phil talked about in the beginning, which is what's so fascinating about this conversation. But I want to close out with a prediction for 2025. So I'm going to ask you to fill in the blank here. Companies that get ahead in 2025 will do this one thing when it comes to workplace. What would that one thing be from your perspective?
I think being in the prediction business right now is a really good way to get whiplash. But I do think that one powerful mindset change for companies, stop thinking about quote unquote hybrid work versus regular work or in-person work. That's an imagined lifeline that connects us to an aging vision. It's all just work. And the pandemic has set us in this new direction that, again, to come back to that word fluid, that we need to flow with. We have an entire cohort of rising employees who don't really know any different. Those are the people that we need to be investing in. And what's amazing about them is that they're ready to embrace and define the experiences that we develop for them with that new mindset. So my prediction is that companies that embrace that will do well.
Good one. Phil, what would yours be?
A simple one, define purpose of place. Like actually be willing to put it on paper. This is why we have all places. This is why we have this place, and I'm holding it accountable. More kind of personally, the most successful transformation programs that I witnessed at McKinsey were the ones where CEOs came out publicly saying like, I have absolutely no idea what the answer is. I just want to make tomorrow better than yesterday was in terms of the total experience of our employees. And maybe it's face, and maybe it's tech, and maybe it's the way I show up. Let's just keep learning.
That's a really great way to end, is just to say, let's make tomorrow better than today. Yeah. And I think this conversation has sparked a lot for me. I can see in both of your expressions over camera that it has for you too. So hopefully it sparks some make tomorrow better than today for our listeners as well. So thank you both.
You already
so much.
I have a new friend. I didn't know Matthew. Now I know Matthew.
Look at that. Yeah. I predict more collaboration here. So what's the biggest takeaway from today? I'd say it's this. The future of work isn't just about where we work or the tools we use. It's about why we choose to show up at all. People aren't motivated by policies or even processes. They're driven by connection, purpose, and experience. And if we don't design for those deeper human needs, no amount of technology or return to office mandates will make a difference. The best workplaces of the future won't just function well, they'll feel right. And the companies that recognize this shift will be the ones that attract the best talent, build the strongest cultures, and truly harness the competitive advantage of our biggest asset, our people. I have to say, after years of writing about the future of work, this conversation, for me, hit differently. Phil and Matthew brought perspectives that challenged even my own thinking. And I'm walking away from this episode with a renewed sense of urgency. Not to just talk about these ideas, but to help put them into action. So if this sparked something from you, I want to personally invite you to share this with a colleague, a client, or someone else you think needs to hear this. Let's keep this conversation going. I'll also invite you to follow me, Amanda Schneider, on LinkedIn, and also be sure you're following Phil Kirshner and Matthew Marzynski as well. They're constantly sharing fresh insights that will really help not only push our industry forward, but the world. All right, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. Was this conversation enlightening? Hear more on the future of work in my recent TEDx talk, which is now live, where I tackle all the ways work is broken and how, if we let them, Gen Z can help us fix it. You can watch the full talk linked in this episode's show notes or from ThinkLab's website.
Thanks for listening to Design Nerds Anonymous. That sounds so crazy. What the heck?
Design Nerds Anonymous is a proud member of the Surround Podcast Network. Special thanks to the production team, Hannah Vitti and Rachel Senator.
That was really fun.
Isn't that really fun?
Ooga chaka, ooga, ooga, ooga chaka. so cool. I love that so much. Goodbye, everybody.
Join the conversation on Design Nerds Anonymous. What have we missed? Are you doing something spectacular to lead the Phygital revolution? If so, I want to personally invite you to call our hotline, share your thoughts, and who knows, You could be featured on social channels or possibly even a future podcast episode. Simply call our hotline at 917-934-2942 and make your voice heard.